This is our second Algebra 2 prep packet. Again, because the state waived state testing, we are going to just be reviewing Algebra 1 concepts just to prepare for Algebra 2 next year. We've done factoring. On your last test, you had to do factoring with the GCF, the greatest common factor. Now we're going to kind of lead into some more methods of factoring because in Algebra 2, you do use factoring quite often. So this one is factor by grouping, and this is only used when you have 4 terms. So like this one, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. You have 4 numbers, 4 terms. That means you're gonna do factor by grouping. And how you do that is you group them. You put them in the 2 groups of 2. And that's why you have to know from last chapter or the last quiz we had. You take the greatest common factor of each group. So let's just review that. The greatest common factor means it's the biggest number that can go into both. So the biggest number that can be divided evenly into 3 and 12 is 3. They both share an n, so I need to bring out the smaller of the 2. Well, of n cubed and n squared is the smaller one. And then you got to figure out what's left in parentheses by division. 3 divided by 3 is 1. I have 3 n's here. I took 2 out of the parentheses already, so that means there's only 1 left. Negative 12 divided by 3 is negative 4. I have 2 n's here. I already took 2 out. That means there's no n's left over. So that's my first group factored with the GCF. Now I got to do my second group. For my second group, the greatest common factor of 2 and 8 would be 2. Okay, hopefully you don't, my husband is like working out in the background and it sounds like he's dying, so hopefully you don't hear that. Anyways, so the GCF of 2 and 8 is 2. You do not bring out an n because they both don't have one. So I'm just gonna go straight to figuring out what's left over in parentheses. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and I have that n there. And negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. So there I factored both groups. Now, you know you did it correct because your parentheses need to match. If they're not matching, you did something wrong. Now you gotta write out your final answer. We're not done, unfortunately, but we're pretty close. One of your answers is your matching pair, the n minus 4. The other answer are your numbers you brought out front, 3n squared and then positive 2. That is your final answer. Now it's factored completely. And I should mention this packet is on Google Classroom, so either right now you can follow along by printing it out or just having a scratch piece of paper and have it open on your computer. However you want to do it, but it is on Google Classroom. Now, for the second one, again, there's 4 numbers. GCF of each group. Greatest common factor of 4 and 8 is 4. They both have a q, so you bring out the smaller of the 2. I have q to the 4th and q to the 3rd. Q to the 3rd is the smaller one. 4 divided by 4 is 1. I have 4 q's here. I brought 3 out. That means I have 1 left over. Negative 8 divided by 4 is negative 2. I have 3 q's. I brought 3 out. That means there's none left over. For my second group, the greatest common factor of 12 and 24 is 12. That's the biggest number that can go into both evenly. They both have a q, so I bring out the smaller one, which would just be q. Now I gotta figure out what's left over in parentheses. 12 divided by 12 is 1. I have 2 q's here. I already brought 1 out of the parentheses. That means there's 1 left over. Negative 24 divided by 12 is negative 2. A q and a q would cancel out, so there's no q's left over. These match, so that means I did it right. But now I gotta write out my final answer. So one of my answers is that q minus 2. The other one are my numbers out in front. So 4q to the 3rd plus 12q. And there's my answer for number 2. All right, we'll do one more. So put them into 2 groups of 2. The GCF of 6 and 9 is 3. They both have an h, so bring out the smaller of the two, which would be h to the power 3. Now what's left in parentheses, 6 divided by 3 is 2, and I would have 1 h left over, because I have 4 and I took 3 out. 9 divided by 3 is 3, and I would have no h's left over, because these h to the thirds would cancel each other out. For my second group, the biggest number that can go into 12 and 18 is 6. They both have an h, so the smaller one would just be h, so I need to bring that out. Now, what's left over? 12 divided by 6 is 2. I have 2 h's here. I already brought 1 out, so that's 1 left over. 18 divided by 6 is 3. There's 1 h here. I brought 1 out. That's none left over. These match, which means you did it right. So 2h plus 3 is one of your answers. The other one is 3h to the power of 3 plus 6h. And there's the answer to the last one. On this second page, I just have some extra questions if you want extra practice. So they're with the 4 numbers, so you do the same thing, put them into 2 groups of 2, and find the greatest common factor of each group. And then later on in the week, we'll learn a different way of factoring. So factoring has a lot to do with the greatest common factor, but there's different methods to doing that. This method is when you have 4 terms. That's why they call grouping, because you can put them into 2 groups of 2. So like usual, just email me with any questions.